Right, in this video I wanted to take a look at another example of doing initial database design where we go from our scenario to an informal data model. Now we're not going to yet go to ER design or SQL schema, we'll just stop at this point. And the scenario I thought we'd deal with this time is movies. Now I'm sure some of you at least know about IMDb, which is the Internet Movie Database. That's a B. Might not look like it, but it is. So it's obviously a very large database that covers pretty much every movie ever made, plus lots of other information. So let's say that that database didn't exist and we wanted to make a database like that. Now IMDb makes money, so if we did a good job of this, we can make money too. All right, so what are the obvious things that we need to worry about? Well, patently obvious is movies. I'll talk about what information we care about with movies in a minute. And then there's all the people who are associated with movies. So I'll just start by writing people. And often when you're doing a database scenario, there are various classes of people that crop up. But always it's going to be people, and people have names. Ooh, and I decided to use different colours, but I used the wrong colour. Right, people have names and date of birth and place of birth. You know, movie fans seem to be interested in that kind of thing. And of course there are different kinds of people. There are actors, there are directors, and the crew in general. And then there are people who are associated with the movie, but they're not actually any of those. And an example of that would be people like producers. So they provide the money to get the whole process going. So different kinds of people, but they're all people. What other kinds of things might we be interested in? Well, one thing that IMDb is big on is ratings. And when you're designing like this, it's handy if you can rub things out, because now I've just come to the realization that there's another class of person who are the people who use IMDb and provide the ratings on the movies. So different classes of people. Now it's interesting, maybe for users we don't care so much about their date of birth, maybe we do care about their name. Another thing that's going to crop up, and it relates to what I said in one of the earlier videos, there are clearly going to be multiple people with the same name, so simply knowing someone's name isn't enough to identify them. So typically we introduce a unique identifying key value, which could be some kind of number. And often those kind of internal keys are generated by the database itself, and we don't have to worry, but we need them to make sure that we can uniquely identify people. Other information that we might be interested in, we might be interested in box office related things. Now I'm not sure that IMDb actually has show times for every movie everywhere in the world. That would be a lot of information to maintain. But we certainly might be interested in maintaining information about, you know, the top grossing movies, which could be a cumulative box office kind of thing. But maybe we want to be better than IMDb by actually having links to all of the showings of all of the current running movies anywhere in the world, which would be a lot of work to accumulate all the data, but you know, for the sake of argument, that's what we're interested in doing. All right, so let's start teasing things out about movies. What do we want to know about movies? And here I'm going to violate the colour scheme that I'm using in later videos. But anyway, so this object, this thing, I've written in green, and all the characteristics that I'm interested in for this object, I will write in blue. So obviously a movie has a title. Now, of course, there are often remakes, so there may be multiple movies with the same title, and we can distinguish them by the year they're made. I don't think I've ever seen a situation where a movie with the same name was made, or two movies with the same name were made in the same year. But if they were, then we've always got our handy, unique numeric key to fall back on. What else about movies? Running time. How many minutes, so we can decide whether we want to borrow it and spend 3 hours or 1 hour and a bit. What kind of movie is it? So genre is an important property of a movie. Is it a sci-fi movie? Is it a romantic comedy? And so on and so on. So that's going to be helpful for users who might be able to filter movies by genre. So they know they don't care at all about rom-coms, but they might be interested in action movies. So we can narrow things down if they're actually searching for a movie. Let me see, year made. Oh yeah, we might be interested in providing some information about the plot. Of course, you don't want to add too many spoilers, so maybe they could be a separate property that isn't necessarily displayed. So when I start talking about things like that, not necessarily being displayed, I'm actually talking about the runtime behavior of the system, which we don't care about at this stage. We're really just trying to capture all of the interesting information about the objects in the system. All right, and of course, with movies, we've got a cast. Now, that's interesting in that the cast isn't a single thing. It's actually a connection between a movie and all of the people involved in it. So we've got some kind of connection to people. And the other interesting thing about the connection between the movie and the person is what role this person plays in the movie. And in the case of movies, there are actually two aspects of role. So one aspect of role is whether they're an actor or a director or a cameraman or a producer. And the other aspect of role, especially in the case of actors, is what character they play in the movie, or what potentially multiple characters they play. So, generally we call that a role, but just to try and distinguish them. So the connection between movies and people isn't quite so simple as just saying, hey, this person is involved in this movie. How are they involved in it? And if they're an actor, what's their character in the movie? Let's see, ratings. Okay, ratings are clearly something that's related to movies, but also ratings come from users of the system. So a user provides a rating for a particular movie. So we've got this kind of triangular relationship there. We'll see how that turns out into something simpler in ER design, but a user makes a rating on a particular movie. I don't know if IMDb allows users to rate actors' performances in movies, but maybe we could do that, in which case we'd need to add another kind of rating down here. Now, whether all of these things are relevant really depends on the ultimate requirements of the system. So at some point you need to go back and consult the person or people who asked you to build the system and find out, do we care about users rating actors and things like that? And if we don't, then we can just ignore that. The box office information, where that would come from, don't know. Perhaps I've written it as a thing, but in fact, maybe it's a property of the movie. Now, it's an interesting property because it's something that's going to change over time. The movie's title doesn't change, although I guess occasionally they have changed. The year it was made certainly doesn't change. The length generally doesn't change unless we have a director's cut, which is longer, but then you could argue that's potentially a different movie. The genre doesn't change unless someone decides, no, this isn't really a science fiction movie, it's really a romantic comedy. The plot typically wouldn't change, still got the same movie. The cast, that's pretty much fixed, although we saw that the cast is a relationship between people and movies, but the box office does change over time. So it's a different kind of property to generally all of these other ones. And so that's an interesting thing to know. How do we represent this? Well, in fact, it doesn't really get described particularly in these kind of models. Once again, it's a property of the system that implements this overall data model. Okay, I think that's pretty much covered this scenario. If you can think of other things that you think I should have put them in the comments below. And that will do.